Today on Huge Profits, we're going to show you how you can create what most people take 20, 30, even 40 years to accomplish and compress it down to 6 or 24 months, correcting past mistakes regardless of how big they were, and setting your trajectory as high as you want. We're going to do that using our financial time machine model.
All right, that's super excited. Let's get the show on the road.
Where we're going, we don't need roads. So many people get tied up in where they are in life, what stage of life they're in, or hey, I'm too young, I'm too old. No one's gonna invest in me because I'm too young. I don't have the credibility, I don't have the experience, I don't have the balance sheet, I don't have the resources, I don't have the tools. They get tied up in that. Or some people say, man, if I had known about this 20, 30 years ago, I would have lit the world on fire.
Yeah.
Now for me, that ship has sailed, and that's just not true. That's what I found. I found that people can act at any age with the right guidance, the right inspiration, and really the right toolkit.
I think you nailed it exactly. Those are the two big time-based impediments that most people put on themselves, which is really not true. Which
pretty
is
arbitrary.
Really, it's a false artifice,
It
right?
really is.
It's like, I'm too young, no one's going to take me serious. And I saw you when you were, I'm not saying that you're old now, but much younger man than you were.
Wow.
I mean, you were considered
Sure.
an upstart, right? And you were getting these things done.
It was a bit of a paradigm breaker, right?
Right, yeah, really.
That's what made it stand out, was that this younger guy was able to do things that were largely reserved for older folks.
But so many people delay their dreams. They're like, if I can just get a little bit more of a base on me, if I can get a little more experience, if I can do this, then I'll finally be in a position to make this big play. Or they live in regret. It's like, man, I missed all these opportunities. I saw them, and I just, you know what? I don't think I have it in me anymore, or that door's closed for me. And that prevents so many people from, pursuing and ultimately achieving their goals. So you've been telling me about this for years, and I think it's a super amazing and really clever concept, the financial time machine.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
So the financial time machine really takes the understanding of people's long-standing ambition, humanity's ambition, to be able to move through time. What if we could be, utilizing the theory of relativity, what if we could go ahead and travel at the speed of light, right? We could go to distant galaxies and, again, in a blink of an eye, all of a sudden you come back and everybody's old, right? And what happens is people get tied up in how long they think things will take. I've done it even in my own life.
Sure.
In one other tranche of my life, I'm a filmmaker, right? I said, well, even if it takes 25 years to make this film, and I'll be doggone if it took me 25 years because I put that time constraint on myself. Where other things, I was like, look, I'm just not even going to let any limitations exist within the way that I'm thinking about it. And then instantaneously, I went from being somebody who had never spoken before to all of a sudden I'm sharing the stage with, you saw it, in front of 20, 30, 40, 50,000 people with heads of nations and, world recognized artists and people who are really shaping culture. And I really didn't have a lot of credibility, right? I hadn't built up this 10 years of credibility, but what it was I had a message that was inspiring. So I've experienced it on both sides of my life where I delayed my success in one sense because I said, well, it's going to take me 25 years to do it. So I used up almost every second of that.
Yeah, right.
And then in the other times when I didn't put those limitations on myself, I was able to create success that outpaced my wildest dreams, almost what they consider to be overnight. And then I was able to encourage others to take those reins off of themselves. And so we've been able to do that for people. Hundreds and thousands of people have been able to break through those barriers because they saw one person do it, right? It's like Roger Bannister when he broke the 4-minute mile. Nobody had done it in human history.
Right.
And then all of a sudden right away,
You don't
it
think there's
starts
some
happening.
dude just running away from like a hyena or something and broke a 4-minute mile before? This isn't recorded history or in competitive history.
That's right.
I'm sure some dude was running from a bear or hyena and broke a 4-minute mile before.
Well,
Roger
yeah,
Bannister.
but was it in the official record book? Probably not.
Well, I think the rest of his God-given life being able to be lived, that counts as a record.
He didn't recognize that he was being chased by a bear into an ambush. That's really what happened. So he couldn't live to tell about it.
Right. So you brought up relativity, right? And so often you'll hear time travel kind of explained in the fact that, a black hole can be so massive and so heavy that it creates a bend in time-space, right? And that by going at the speed of light, you can use that dip to kind of compress time. And that's really what the core of the financial time machine is compressing an investment window. Because look, I know so many people have said, okay, I really should have went to college and, but I know it's a 6-year program. And then 6 years later, they're like, I should have went to college. And if you would have just done it, you'd have been over by then.
It's true.
Or, if I would have just made these investments, or if I had just been saving up $10 a week for this amount of time, I would have this amount of money. And then you look back, you're like, I should have done it, right?
Right.
So this compression of time using the financial time machine, that can kind of correct those past mistakes, but then also alleviate the fact that I don't want to wait for it. Look, I'm 45. I don't want to wait till I'm 65 to get my payoff, because I'm going to be 65 years old. I'm going to be old and gray, and I won't even want to do the stuff I want to do now. I want it now.
Right. And that was one of the dichotomies. When I went ahead and I started talking to other people about what journey I would take.
Yeah.
I talked to people who were investing in different types of real estate, residential, flips, pre-foreclosure. I talked to folks who were doing, rehab and rental, building a portfolio where they wanted to have hundreds of houses. But I also started talking with folks who had done commercial real estate. And I was really inspired by that, because I've got that scale of economy. I got the ability to go ahead and control 25 units in one transaction. Right. And then after that, 50,000 units. And that was based on square footage. And so when I started to realize all of those things together, what it did was it said, look, my ambitions can be much higher if I don't have to work in the residential market. Mm-hmm. But when I talked to the folks about that, they laid out this path for me that was going to take me 20 or 30 years to get there.
Yeah.
And so while I realized that, real estate was where I wanted to go, I realized that commercial real estate was actually going to be the catalyst, because I wasn't going to be tied to what was going on in the economy, in the marketplace. I could interject my specific ambitions, cleaning the property up, raising the rents, finding better tenants, whatever the case may have been. And I was going to be able to create what would take decades in the residential market in one single transaction. And so it allowed me to compress that time down. And then I realized, well, listen, this works in really every facet of my life. I can do things on my timeline. Most people say, well, look, you go to school, you spend your first 6 years in primary education, then you spend your second 6 years getting maybe that elevated, grade school education.
Yep.
Before you move on to, your bachelor's degree, and then maybe hopefully your master's, and then maybe your doctorate, right? So, and then you get married, and then you get your wife, your 2 kids, your picket fence, and
the
you
game
move on
plan's
with life.
kind of all laid out for you there.
Right. And if you're not on that time frame, then you're off. You're either behind or you're ahead. And I never bought that.
Yeah, you're a late bloomer.
You're a late bloomer. Oh, you missed the boat. You're 30 years old. You haven't had kids yet. And I'm like, no, that is a 200-year-old model.
Yeah.
That's for people who are living 50 years. And so by going ahead and really taking a look at things and saying, look, I can live intentionally. I can not be bound by these artificial timelines that are mostly people's learned and lived experiences impressed upon you, right? It takes this long to be able to do this. Overnight success takes 10 years. You got to put in 10,000 hours to be an expert, all of that stuff. It's like, no, that's not true. I can be an expert through reference.
Right.
I can be an expert through relationship. I can be an expert through partnership, right? And what we've learned today, and everybody knows this, is that it's not actually what you know, it's the people around you that you've got working on your behalf, leveraging their skills, their experience, and their timeline, because you can't know it all.
Right. I mean, you could try. One of the things, the story you always used to tell me, and I love the story, is that you were going to, when you're first getting started, and you were maybe 30, right? And you're going to these investor meetings, and there's this kind of guy who's acting like he's the cock of the walk. He's the big shot, right? Sure. And he told you this story about how one day you could be like him. Well, tell me that story again, because I think this is something that speaks so perfectly to this and why you felt the need. I think that moment was you falling off and hitting your head on the sink and coming up with the flux capacitor for the time machine here.
Absolutely. I think that's kind of what gave me the keys to the DeLorean, as we've talked about. So I went to a regional real estate investor association meeting. And when you go into those types of meetings, what you'll find is all kinds of people, and everybody's kind of posturing a little bit.
Yep.
Hey, this guy's got 20 homes. This guy's got 50 homes. This guy's buying a home a week.
A home a week?
Which is crazy, right?
My gosh, who could do that?
I mean, and I remember at the time I was living in half a house and struggling to pay my rent, right? And, so I'm trying to figure it out. I'm trying to get an advantage.
A home a week is impressive, though.
It is huge. Yeah. It's amazing. It's not sustainable,
right?
As we found out even with him, right? It's, it's disseparate assets in different markets, different vintages, different, infrastructure. And so it becomes a living, breathing nightmare. It's a gilded cage that people don't see.
But that dude was feeling himself, though.
Well, he was, and he was pretty full of himself at the time. But I recognized that they were in so much demand because there was no uniformity to what was going on, that every time there was a problem, they kind of had to get involved. And there was another guy who was older, a little more well-fed, right?
Yeah.
He was a little porky. And but he was the one, when he walked in, it was like, Leopold.
Leopold. That's a great name,
right?
too.
You know? And
it's Leopold.
It's like, he's here. He's finally shown up.
The Leopold.
Because he's out there, he's on vacation,
Sure.
right? He's going to exotic lands, and he's driving the best cars, and his kids go to the best schools, and eats at the finest restaurants, and he doesn't do anything he doesn't want to do. And when he walks in, he's got all the gravitas. And so finally, after a couple of months, I worked up the courage to talk to this guy, and I'm like, hey, how many houses a week are you buying? And what strategies do you use? And he gave me this look that said, you poor, sad little man. It's like, Scott, I don't buy houses. He said, I buy apartment complexes, I buy shopping centers, I buy office buildings. I develop housing subdivisions. And I thought, man, this is great. I said, could I buy apartment buildings and retail shopping centers too? He's like, well, of course you could. I said, well, how would I do that? He's like, well, first go out and get yourself a nice little 4-suiter, and then you get a 6-suiter and an 8-suiter and a 10-suiter, and you get your first little 5,000 square foot shopping center, and then you get a bigger one and a bigger one, and when you're my age, you'll be like me. And I thought, he's thinking I'm impressed, and I'm thinking, yeah, I'm going to be old. I can't take that length of time. I'm broke now, man. I need to check
Right.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so, while I believed him that I could do it, I didn't think I had to take this circuitous route that he had kind of lined up for me.
Yeah.
So I went out, I completely changed my mantra. My mantra before that was real estate's my ticket to freedom. Now it was commercial real estate's my ticket to freedom. Yeah. And when I went to talk to people, nobody believed I could do it. Nobody thought, somebody's going to let you buy an apartment complex? You've got no experience.
It's like giving a toddler a machine gun. You
Right,
don't do
monkey
it.
machine gun.
Yeah.
Right? You can't do it, right? I'm like, you're going to blow your toe, you blow your toes off. So I went out and I started talking to people, and the more I said it, the more confident I became. And even though I had no money, no credit, and no experience, I found a guy who was willing to offer me seller financing because I had made a stronger deal. I offered him an above ask offer price at a time when the market was a little soft. Everybody was trying to, chisel him down a little bit. They're trying to, he wanted 900,000, and they're like, well, I'm offering him 8.
Yeah, I'll give you 8.
That's what it's worth. I'll give you 850,
Yeah.
right? Me, I flipped the script. I'm like, if he starts checking out the fact that I got no money, no credit, no experience, he's not going to give me the shot.
Right.
So I offered him 918,000, 2% more than ask.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton.
Well, if you want to learn how to overpay for commercial real estate, we've got some experience on that.
Got a course on that, overpaying?
But here's the thing. It got me control of an asset that I could have never have afforded.
For $18,000.
For 18 grand.
Right.
And I was able to raise the capital because the property itself threw off enough cash flow. And the rents hadn't been raised in 5 years, so I knew that I could raise those rents.
Sure.
With a little bit of cosmetic polish, we added nearly $500,000 in value, which to me at the time was 10 years' income in 1 year of rewriting leases.
So you fast forwarded a decade financially.
Instantly, with no money, no credit, no experience. And the only reason he did that deal, and it's something I want everybody to hear today, is that we're in a market cycle right now where it's a buyer's market. So people who own assets that they don't want, if they're underperforming in any way, if they're not stabilized, 85% occupied or greater, and that's for a full calendar year of seasoned historic operations, no bank's going to lend to them.
Yeah.
And so people get into situations where they have to sell, or they've inherited an asset, or they need cash, or their business is in trouble, and so they got to liquidate something, and now they're willing to sell or finance. And because he was already familiar with the building, had already owned it for 20 years, he had no risk. My down payment was his if I failed.
Right.
And he was going to get an asset back that he was completely comfortable with. So there are so many reasons why this works, but for me, that allowed me to time jump not only a decade, but from a credibility perspective. Now when I went to the bank, I owned this apartment building.
Right.
So now I'm somebody who has borrowing power, and I've got an asset base where literally 24 hours before I owned that building, I couldn't go ask for a car loan.
Right.
And that's the truth.
I remember me and you went to the music store, and I got a guitar, and you wanted to buy drums.
Yeah, I wanted to buy a drum kit, and I wanted to buy a little Korg synthesizer.
Right.
And it was $5,000, and it was at Sam Ash, and they ran my credit. They said, "Sorry, kid, we can't give you a keyboard."
Right.
But this guy gave me a $918,000, basically $1 million apartment complex.
Well, Sam Ash is out of business now.
Yeah, and we're doing okay.
Right.
So good for them.
Right. Good job, Sammy.
Yeah, well,
classic Sam Ash.
Hey, it is. That's exactly classic Sammy.
Now, you said something that I think, actually, Sammy's a great guy. He just passed away like 2 years ago. He was a great guy. But
But he sold to private equity at the wrong time.
Yeah.
See, that's where it went wrong.
You can't do that.
Can't do that.
So you said something in that story that I think really speaks to the heart of the flux capacitor of what the financial time machine is, right? You were talking about commercial real estate, right? With single family homes, how do you make money? Well, through appreciation, right? And appreciation is a market cycle. It just takes time, or it takes massive renovations.
Well, you can do all the work too, and
right.
if the market breaks against you, you could put all the money in, do all of the effort, and then what always happens with most folks is they're kind of tapped.
Right.
Their cash is in the deal. They need to bump that value. And what almost always happens is the banks are sophisticated. They've seen this model.
Yep.
So they appraise it in a way that knocks away a lot of the value. Then they're only going to lend you about 80% of that anyway. So if they chip away at the value based upon they found a low comp, right, something that sold cheap in the market because somebody didn't take care of it, like, well, this comp knocks you down, so we can only lend you this much. You're basically kind of ratcheting up your loan to almost the true full equity.
Yeah.
So most people get trapped in those because they've taken all the money out and now they can't sell it by the time they pay the real estate commissions, by the time they negotiate. If the market breaks against you, you're really tied up.
And they suck cash and time into that.
Well, and it's not really a transferable asset because it's not based on income.
Right.
Right.
That's it right there.
So in commercial real estate, it's based on the income you generate. And if we can raise that income, we raise the value regardless of what happens to the building across the street.
Yeah, housing market might take, 5, 6, 10 years to increase the cost of a standard house, $100,000, $200,000. Commercial real estate, though, you can compress that because like you said, it's an income-based property. And if you increase the rents by renovations or by better management and decrease the debt, you've essentially just forced the appreciation. So isn't kind of forced appreciation, isn't that the 121 gigawatts that powers the whole engine?
Yeah, it is. It's the 1.21 gigawatts, right?
Yep.
I think that's what it was. But here's the point of
Then
that.
what I say?
I think you said 121 gigawatts, which won't
Anthony, can we get a replay on that?
That won't get the job done. If you want to know, you're not
1.21
traveling in
gigawatts?
time with gigawatts. You need gigawatts.
Well, gigawatts and gigawatts is the same thing.
It is. It's the exact same thing.
I don't know the scale. 1.2, 1.21 gigawatts or 121 gigawatts. Let's see. And if I get it wrong,
I think
Anthony,
121 is too much. I think you're blow up the capacitor. You need 1.21.
You're not getting anywhere with that attitude. I got 121 gigawatts. You got 1.21. See you in the year 4000, bro.
Well, and here's the good part about it.
But forced appreciation.
Forced appreciation is really the thing that's going to accelerate your model.
Right.
And the key is it's a certainty in commercial real estate because it's based on income. And the other part that most people don't really get is that there's a market. There's a secondary market for cash flows. That's what the stock market is, right?
Sure.
That's what the bond market is. That's what the annuities market is, right? It's cash flow. In a single family home, it's not really a cash flow model, right? You can rent it, but by the time you pay your mortgage, by the time you pay your taxes, by the time you renovate it after they didn't take care of it or they left in the middle of the night, you didn't make it worth more. It's actually the use makes it worth less.
Yeah.
But in commercial real estate, the actual user makes it worth a lot more, and it's a contract, and it's not for a year.
Right.
It's for 5, 10, 15, 20. I've got some leases that are 99 years long on ground leases where they're just going to keep paying for generations of my children's and grandchildren's
That's literally
benefit.
a time machine.
That's the time machine.
That's you traveling 100 years in the future, and little J. Scott Shield IV is there, and it's like, thanks, great-great-grandpa, for the check. That's pretty nice of you.
Yeah,
right?
we're going to keep that bust on the mantle a couple more weeks because the checks keep rolling.
Yeah,
in,
right?
We
were about to toss that urn out with the garage sale, but I think we're going to keep it.
I think we're going to use it as an ashtray because the ground lease finally sold. But the point of it is to say this, is that we build those cash flows, and then those are so saleable. And so it doesn't matter whether the bond market's at 5% or 7% or even 12%. Your value is going to change, but it's a fixed asset. And so in the stock market, in the annuities market, in the bond market, there's nothing you can do to improve upon the return.
Yep.
The return is arbitrary and it's varied and it's based on external influences that are going to shape how that investment performs. There was a promise up front.
What can I do to make my Bitcoin worth more? Or what can I do to make my Google stock worth
You
more?
guess right on your timing, but
That's
here
it. I can't do anything to influence its value.
And we always buy at the bottom of the market. So
Right.
I am buying assets in the best neighborhoods with the basically worst management and most deferred maintenance. Because those are things I can step in and I can quantify how much money it's going to take to make this competitive or even ultra competitive, superior to my competition. So now I go out and I start poaching tenants, or I've got the ability to go ahead and press my rents up a little bit. And because I've got that bulletproof basis, that low cost of acquisition, when I add on to it, I'm still below my cost model of my competition.
Yeah.
And so now I fill mine up, they're out there struggling, and it gives us the ability to create, I mean, literally millions of dollars in value with just a couple of signatures on a lease of some credible businesses. So you check their financials, make sure that it ties out. I tell people all the time, it takes one lease to turn you into a millionaire.
Right.
And they don't really get that. They don't believe it. Or it takes 10 apartment units where you raise the rents, $100 to turn that cash flow into $500,000. This is something that anybody can do and anybody should do. And the best part about it is, while you're driving in your time machine, you can still do everything else that you're doing. You don't have to do it to the exclusion of your current job.
Right.
You don't have to, bet the ranch to make it happen. And because it's cash flows, a lot of investors are looking at it. And we haven't even gotten into the ancillary accelerators of paying off your debt over time, right? Letting your tenants pay your debt down, or the tax shelters that come. So you give people an incentive to get on the time machine journey with you, because they're either going to give the money to Uncle Sam right now, or they can get in that time machine and they can defer the tax 2, 5, 10 years.
Leopold, come with me now. There's a huge problem. What is it, Doc? It's your taxes.
And they're big,
right?
And they get bigger.
Yeah.
And once you give Uncle Sam the money, it's gone.
Yeah.
But if you use it today, what it does for you is it allows you the ability to invest tax-free, tax-deferred dollars you wouldn't otherwise have. And you can share that with investors. So
I love the strategy of dying to beat Uncle Sam.
Well, a
Just
lot of people
defer until you die, and it's like, come, you want my money? Come take it from my cold, dead hands.
Well, thank God for the step up in basis, which was preserved by the current administration, because without that, that goes away. And I'll tell you what, if that ever does go away, California's done. Because everybody bought their stuff in the 50s and the 60s. They couldn't even come close to sniffing the taxes.
They would lose all
today,
of it.
which is why it'll never happen. New York, California, the coasts are going to make sure that it never happens. And that's why it was a pretty big slap in the face when Trump, went ahead and, capped the SALT tax, right? Which is, basically a mortgage interest deduction for the wealthy, right? He said, look, you know what? If you don't need all of these benefits and you want to pretend like you're so altruistic, then let's just cap your tax shelter at 10 grand. Man, that turns so many lovers into haters, right? And so it changes the model. So if you're not factoring in the tax component of what we're doing, then you're really missing out on the boat, because that's your biggest partner is Uncle Sam.
Yeah. So like we were saying, the heart of the time machine, the thing that really powers the financial time machine, essentially is forced appreciation, the ability to make something worth more. What market forces would take 5, 10, 15, 20 years to make it, you can make that happen in a year, 2 years, and generate all that revenue now.
So like with anything that we're talking about, though, real quick, there's 7, basic strategies that we employ that really empower that further.
And that's what I was going to ask.
And so you talked about a couple of them. Like one of them is the deferral of taxes. Well, that's a time move, right? The move is it's still due, but would you rather pay it today, or would you rather use the money kind of on loan with no interest, right? Because there's no interest, there's no penalties in this deferral, but now you get all that money today. If you paid the taxes on that gain right now, some people say, well, you get extra 20% buying power. No. If you buy it right? If you buy it right, you're going to get, many multiples of that. That couldn't happen, and it would take you another decade of your life to earn it and keep it by paying the taxes. But there are other strategies that allow us to move that timeline in our favor. Like, we talked about, if you sign the right lease on the right asset class, which we will teach you, it's instantaneous. If you sign a lease on the wrong asset class, it's 2 more years of hard work before it's even recognized as an income stream.
What do we mean by that? Like, so what would be an example of signing the wrong lease?
So signing the wrong lease is if you go ahead and say, look, I'm buying this beat up apartment complex and I'm going to clean it up, and I bought it in October, and I'm getting it all cleaned up, and it'll be ready to go by February. You've got to operate that thing all the way from February to December And then you got to operate it from January through December of the next year before you have 12 full months of stabilized financials that'll be recognized by the bank.
So it's a calendar move.
Well, and what happens is if you do that in industrial, retail, office, if you deal with it in storage facilities, right? The second that lease is signed, it's bankable.
Right.
And so what I got to tell people to do is you've got to be able to get into that pure commercial asset base. I do multifamily all the time. We're talking about a new program, even as I walked in today, on about $100 million transaction.
For everyone who's watching, he was 15 minutes late showing up to this episode, and I was just sitting here looking at my phone, looking at memes, and he comes walking in, he's like, sorry, man, I was trying to put together this $100 million deal of a property that I know very well and frankly grew up partying in.
Yeah, well, and you know what the best part about it was when I was talking with the guys who were going to help.
That's a time machine going back to there, and that's not a time machine that I want to take, actually.
Well, when I was 12 years old, my sister and her husband, after they got married, moved into that property.
I remember
So
that.
talk about a time machine. And I went in there. It's on the waterfront. You're overlooking the beautiful lakes, the sunsets, the sunrises, the lake. The waves are lapping at the beachfront.
Yep.
And today it's completely disheveled. The parking garage collapsed. It's got structural issues, and the basis in this, what is easily to rebuild today, $120 million asset, can be acquired for about $4 million.
That's crazy.
And then
Because, that property was the darling. Everyone wanted to live there back in, maybe 10, 15 years ago. Everyone wanted to live there. It's perfectly located.
Yeah.
And now it looks like...
And 40 years ago was the gold standard.
And 40 years is the gold standard. And now it looks like, a video for a sad Bruce Springsteen song, right?
For sure, yeah. It's exactly what happened, what we're in, your hometown, right?
Right, yeah.
Right,
I go there and I think back to when I was young, and I see the faded image of my youth in these towers. But all you have to do is... What? How can you? Let's use this property as an example. Right?
Sure. So the idea is you're going to get in and you're going to renovate it, and I can renovate it to today's standard, literally market rate, highest standard of finishes, incredibly well located with retail amenities. Obviously, the lakefront. There's parks right next to it. There's a lot more to this. Historic state and federal tax credits because it's aged out long enough, and then a financing package that allow me to put $40 million into it.
Okay.
And that $40 million is going to be 92% borrowed on a program that finances for 40 years. We worked on it 5 different ways. There's actually no way it can't work. That's how straightforward this is because $120 million to redevelop, even at that, you could never get this height. They've restricted the height. You couldn't get the density. You couldn't get the unit counts. Right. And so for $40 million, we can create a $120 million asset. Now, that's not something that we're expecting everybody on this, watching this to kind of
But the example plays out.
But I got there from starting with a 24-unit building, right? And that seller finance deal. So that character arc, you might say, well, Scott, you've been doing this for 3 decades. That's why. Well, it's not true because I'm working on it with a client of mine who's been basically on his own doing this for 5 years. And we're going to do this project, hopefully, God willing, together. And when that happens, it'll turn around an asset that is a cornerstone of this community. It's going to have all of the elements that we need, and we will have built in a 40-year investment vehicle for the people that we love and care about, and some of those investors that we're going to let come in. And we're going to screen them to make sure that it's not grocery money that they're putting in. This is IRA money that you're not going to need to touch. And the refinance pivot point on this is 7 years from now, 10 years from now. We pull out not only all our money, but many, many multiples of that. We get a developer fee, and we actually leave a legacy by restoring an asset in a community. So you get the goodwill, you get the pride of ownership, you get to look at it, and then you've built something that's going to feed your family for decades to come because you kind of knew what you were doing. And that can happen on a very small level too. I've got some assets already that I've owned for more than 2 decades.
Yeah.
And there's no reason for them to go away. And other assets, like we talked about a few moments ago, that are lined up to continue to pay the family for 100 years. And at the end of that 100 years, it doesn't go away. What happens is everything that's been built on top of that land reverts back to our ownership if they don't structure a new lease. So what happens is it literally bulletproof the deal.
That's generational wealth.
It's mega generational wealth because what happens is the bank never gets into priority lien position.
Right.
Which is a whole nother strategy we'll talk about on another episode. But right now, what we're really talking about is, 40 years ago, we both aspired to this thing. I was a young man, and they moved in, and you were really just a whippersnapper up there, kind of checking it out. And then
I was a little kid, and I remember, Mike and Lori taking me over to the Chinese restaurant across the street.
Yeah.
It was because my parents were going out to get babysat there.
Right, and
I loved it.
And now,
I would love to be able to go back in time to where that property was a hallmark of the community.
and we can do that. And again, that because of the strategies and the structures that we've got in this time machine, we're making moves in people's lives who aren't even born yet.
That's crazy.
Isn't that nuts?
Yeah. Yeah. So let's do this. This, I think, would be something really interesting because we're talking a lot of hypothetical astrophysics here, right?
Sure.
We're talking a lot of time machine, a lot of time travel analogies.
And big deals that most
deals,
people aren't
right.
really, they're not really contemplating right now.
So we talked about the concept. There's going to be some people who are young out there saying, look,
Yeah.
I'm 30 years old. I don't want to wait until I'm 60.
Can't.
I want to be able to make some money now and really enjoy it while I can. And then there's also people out there who are 60 years old saying, maybe I missed the boat. Now, if I was 30 years old, I can go back knowing everything I know now. I'd go back and I'd be set up now. Let's start with the example of a 30-year-old. What can a 30-year-old do right now? A very achievable example of, let's say, creating 10 years worth of wealth within the next 2 years. What could a 30-year-old do?
Easy. I mean, the idea is to really get started. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but the sooner you move, when you fire up that time machine, you put the key in the DeLorean, you fire it up. Now, all of a sudden, it's what you program. If you want to create a result right away, that can happen through wholesaling. And within our network, and we're going to certainly talk to people about how they have the opportunity to even just refer stuff to us. Maybe it's beyond your skill set, maybe it's beyond your capability, maybe it's beyond your finances, no problem. If it's the right deal, it gets bought in our group for referral fee, for equity, for a combination of both. So they can get started right away without having to have that full education and taking on all the risk because they can get paid right away. Another way that they can do it is really just to start getting familiar with their marketplace, right? Wherever you want to invest. And you always got to look at your hometown because that's where you are, right?
Sure.
That's where you have the ability to have influence and where you have context and you can talk about, hey, I know this area is getting a little better, or I drive by and I wish there was a bank on this corner. It's been vacant forever. Get a hold of the owner and say, look, what are you doing with this thing? I know it's not making you any money. It's been vacant. It's, it's deteriorating, but you know what? It's a great location for a burger joint. It's a great location for a coffee place. It's a great location for a bank, right?
Yep.
Whatever the case may be. And so with that sort of an understanding, and if you can give people just a few little metrics, they can start to bird dog some really killer stuff. But here's more important. When you go out, if you want to self-manage, right? Everybody pretty much understands what it's like to rent an apartment.
Sure.
So you can get into a nice small multifamily deal. And when I
Yeah.
say small, I usually say 20 units or more,
Yeah.
right? Because that gives you the scale of economy to have a manager. So you go out and you make an offer. And I want you to know, we'll break this down, maybe unpack this on another deal where we talk about our map to Unicorn Island,
Sure.
right? Which helps you find those seller finance deals, more than you could do in a career in your first year alone.
Yep.
But by doing that, what happens is you use your energy, you use your available time to be able to step in and improve really the way that those things are operating. And we've got a lot of rules and a lot of guidelines and guardrails to keep people safe. In doing so, it only takes one deal, one time to change your life forever. And that's
Right.
been kind of our tagline forever. So the key there is to get started. And one of the things that we're doing is we're giving people the opportunity to build their understanding and to build their strategy without having to go ahead and committing to huge investments or having to, let's say, cut the cord or burn the ships at the shoreline.
Yep.
And it really gives them the ability to act on an immediate basis.
I love that concept too, because let's say that we have someone out there watching who has been flipping some homes and they've gotten good at it, right? And they know, look, if I flip, 5 homes this year and 5 homes next year, and I do that for the next 5 years, I'm going to be pretty happy where I'm at financially.
No doubt.
But if you could do it all with under one roof, 20 units, 25, 30 units, and instead of waiting 5 years to make all those deals come along, make them all happen, go and paint all of those, go and find, sales of all those. I mean, you could do even right there, the time compression in the scale of economy of an apartment complex or multifamily unit allows that to happen.
Well, it's really just one of those garden style apartments, 3-story walk up,
Yep.
maybe there's an elevator and a 4th story and all of that, but it's right there. So what you talk about, five houses a year is a pretty good pace.
That's great.
For anybody.
Yeah.
So it takes 5 years to get 25 units, or you get 25 units in one contract.
Right.
Here's the other part of it, and I think this is I think this is, maybe a shoving off point in a lot of people's mind, is that it really is about what you focus on.
Sure.
And so if you start to put that out there, most people already are contemplating what they're going to do. And many people who are probably watching today are already doing single-family homes.
Sure.
And they've started to understand maybe some of the features and benefits, but they also understand some of the burden and some of the risk factors today. And while they may have had 2, 3, 20, 100 houses, they start to recognize that that's not really sustainable long-term. And what they've got to do is they've got to get back to a point where they're going to have some houses that are not really doing great.
Yep.
They're going to have their cherries that they really don't want to let go of. And in the end, it only takes one bad apple to spoil the whole bunch, right?
Yeah, and if you have to manage all of those, and the disuniformity of managing a portfolio like that is schizophrenic.
Well, there's no scale of economy. And so that's what we talk about. What if all 25 of your units had the same faucet?
Right.
What if they all had the same garbage disposal? What if they were all at one address? What if they all only operated under one roof?
Right.
That in and of itself allows you the simplicity and the simplified management to be able to put yourself in a position where, look, if there's a problem, I know it's at 1521 Rush Road.
Right. I mean, there's investors out there who are like, screw 5 years from now, just save me 25 minutes going back and forth between these houses every trip.
Well, and again, because it's the same,
Yep.
you can buy in bulk.
Right.
I can stock 5 faucets because they're all going to work.
Yep.
Right. I can have one contractor that does this work
Carpet,
for us.
one
right?
color of walls, everything's the same.
And it really does work. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of tools that we can unpack that allow them to make that transition from single family to commercial without letting go of what they've been doing. Mm-hmm. And what I will tell you is that almost uniformly, almost unanimously, if people have been able to commit to commercial real estate for 1 to 2 years, 3 years at the most, once they do that first 1 or 2 deals, they never go back to residential.
Right.
They never go back, even if it's been a good business model. And so what I always tell people is, look, if you're doing residential and you're successful at it, keep doing it, because those are smaller, faster checks that you're going to get while you're on your way to creating that $500,000, million, or in some instances, many, many millions of dollars per deal.
You told me before about the wealth ladder, right? And how you can look at the different phases of your life, when you should be trying to earn, when you should be trying to invest, and when you should be trying to own.
Yep.
Right. What advice would you give for people on, just general age frames when they should be looking at that? Or is that really more based on wherewithal and where they're at in their career?
Yeah, I think it is a very, very individual decision. And a lot of it has to do with, again, how they are perceiving their capabilities in their own mind.
Yeah, it's long-term wealth planning, what you want from your life, right?
And so much of what has to happen in this business is going to be provided by others anyway.
Right.
And so you feel like you need to know it all, but that's not really true. You need to get a good team around you. You need to get, good resources, and you need to get credible folks who aren't there to take advantage of you, but they're also not there to waste their time. And so you've got to be respectful of their time. So, we talked about that, what's age appropriate and how people constrain themselves. If you're 60, I missed the bus.
Yep.
If you're 20, I'm too young. Neither of which is true.
If I'm 40, I'm too busy.
And so what we found is that the average person starts investing in commercial real estate at the age of 49.
Okay.
So if you're before that, you're kind of ahead of the curve. And if you're after that, which it's hard to be too far after that, right? Even 20 years beyond that, at 69 years old, you can still make moves.
Yep.
But those moves are typically made investing in other people's assets. You've probably already been successful in some other area of your life. So there really isn't any limitation. The key is how you go about it. And the thing that I found when I got started, there were no communities that I could really plug into that would allow me to gain the resources, the relationships, the understanding, let's say the tools, the software metrics. And back in the day, there weren't any of those things.
Just the experience, the team, just any of it.
Boots on the ground,
Right.
Familiarity, the referral network that you could get into, the partner network that you could get into. So those are the accelerants. It's who you surround yourself with. And we've talked about that in earlier episodes. But for me, the idea that you're going to be constrained because of your age is a complete fallacy. And that's why we talk about, act your age or what's age appropriate. In a lot of instances, it's how you feel.
Right.
And so if you respect yourself and you keep your ambition and that spark alive, well, then you can create anything that you want. And I can only say that as confidently as I say it today because we've done it in the lives of thousands and thousands of people.
A 30-year-old could do. But unfortunately, we all get older, right?
For sure.
And I think there's a lot of 60-year-olds who are saying, it's great what a 30-year-old could do in the next 20 years, but I'm 60. In 20 years, I'm going to be 80.
Yep.
What can I do now to maybe set up in the next 5 years? Or what can I maybe do that, I don't know, absolve some of my financial sins over the last 10 years? What would be some advice for a 60-year-old with the same concepts as the financial time machine?
Well, and again, what we've done is we've used 30 and 60 just as kind of arbitrary,
Benchmarks.
dates or,
Yeah.
constructs that we're going to work through. So whether you believe that you're later in your career or earlier in your career, these strategies apply. You don't have to wait till you're 30 to do the one or 60 to do the other. But what they can do is they can build upon their experience, the experience that they've got, whether it's in their career, in their relationships, whether it's in their knowledge of their marketplace. They're credible immediately. You get to walk in and you can start to talk about things. Nobody's going to doubt you.
I bet you Leopold was about 60.
I imagine he would have been. Nobody's going to give him the stick unless he's 60,
Right.
right? And can you really even wear one of those fake wigs?
Oh, I was talking about Leopold the investor who was acting like a big shot at the RIA.
No, I'm talking about the Bugs Bunny that actually conducted the orchestra.
Oh, that dude was great.
He was awesome.
Yeah.
Right?
Only 60-year-olds would get that reference, though.
Couldn't, right?
I'm 60-year-olds inside, though.
Yeah, well, we're wise beyond our years, hopefully.
I think so.
So at 60, what you get the opportunity to do is to really act based on wisdom, and you also have the insight and the credibility largely that's been built. And a lot of guys who are in their 60s they're aging out of their careers. Right.
Yeah.
What happens is their company, look, they appreciate them. They've done great stuff, but you know what? They're no longer a good value because they can invest in their new education. But by the time they learn the new skill and they really get going, the market's going to change a little bit. And the other part of it is they're overpriced.
Yeah.
Right. You can get somebody younger with experience for, less money.
Yeah.
And if you train them, you're going to get more lifespan out of them. You might get 10, 15, 20 years where somebody in their 60s or very late 50s might, contemplate retirement or doing some other things. So the deal here is that they get the opportunity to act and act quickly. And so we can get them into an investment vehicle that are going to allow them to get those tax shelters. And that's really kind of the key. Building a cash flow, utilizing tax shelters, because you're going to be smarter. I mean, most 30-year-olds aren't even thinking taxes. And when they're thinking taxes, they're paying property taxes.
Right.
They're not paying capital gains tax. But your investments have matured. So what are you going to do? Well, if you don't have any tax shelter and you're still on W-2 income, you're giving away 30, 40% of your income to Uncle Sam, and it's hard to build wealth.
He doesn't
that way.
appreciate it.
For sure not. And they're finding ways to overspend the $2 trillion annual deficits. And so what we end up coming back to is the idea that it really is a multifaceted investment. You're going to get appreciation, meaning time is just going to make it worth more because bricks cost more today than they did 30 years ago.
Sure.
You're going to get the depreciation, which is the tax shelter. So if it's worth $5 million, you get to write off a portion of that. So you might be able to make $1 million in real money over the next 1 to 3 years and pay zero tax.
But like a cost segregation.
Cost segregation. And that deferral is kind of going back to what we talked about earlier, that die to win strategy. We're all going to die.
Right.
Right. So we all know that that's
Says
coming.
you.
Well, look, I wish it upon you. But eternal life is reserved for somebody else's gatekeeper.
That's right.
That's
but
not me.
like you always say, that the statistics don't lie. And from what I understand, 1 out of 1 dies.
That's what I've heard,
Right.
right? And I haven't been able to verify it, but I
But you know what
it's
they
true.
say? There's lies, there's damn lies, and there's statistics, right?
And that's the truth. And so when we look at where people are in life, you've got appreciation, you've got depreciation, but you also have amortization, which is what would it feel like, even if you were in a small apartment building, if you had 20 people coming together on the first of the month and giving you 30%
So
of
I
their
think a
income
lot of that covers
to pay down your mortgage. I mean, you can't do that on your own. And so they're chunking it down. If there's only 20, they're paying a year and a half of your mortgage payments if you did it individually every single month. That's compound interest on the exact opposite end, pressing that down. And so as a 60-year-old, you're really able to get in and act immediately. And again, compressing that time frame and replacing your income stream. And you can borrow from IRAs. You can go ahead and use your network. You can show other people how they'll get the tax savings. And because they've largely got some of that experience and they've probably made some money and been successful in their own careers, now what we do is we get them into a fixed asset, which is a hedge against inflation. So everybody's worried about inflation, right? And that's what we're going to have to do. If we've got a $36 trillion national debt, the only way to get out of that is inflation.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we take the $36 million national debt, put it on somebody who's already on death row anyway, sign over all the debt to him, and then execute him? And then the debt goes away, right?
I think we push that into Congress.
Okay. I mean, look, I'm no politician, but that sounds like a good deal to me.
Well,
I mean, just find some lucky, Joe versus the volcano bastard, put the $36 million of debt on him, give him a great weekend. Hey, anything you want for a week, and then, fire him into the sun. Now no one owes anything.
Here's the key.
Does that not work?
It doesn't work because you need to get the creditor to allow you to assign the guarantor.
All right.
And right now it's the United States government. And so
shit, I
because
thought
of
I had
that,
figured it all out. Scott.
well, you know what? And you do come up with these wild ideas, and most of them are good. This particular one.
Do you know what this means? It means this
damn thing doesn't work
at all. One of the things that I think, in hearing you talk about 60-year-olds is that a lot of times they are going to have been successful, whether they're a doctor, a business person, whether they're an investor, whether they're a tradesman, whatever. They have established and probably have accumulated some basis of wealth.
Yes.
But they probably left a lot of the potential wealth they could have earned in their career on the table in the last 20 years.
Well, because that compounding effect.
Right.
The sooner you start, the better it's going to be.
So it's not always going into the future. Sometimes it's going in the back and recouping what you could have earned, and by taking the stuff that you did accumulate and now really making work over the next 2 or 3 years.
Well, and many people already have established businesses, right? They're already working in a career, or they own their own business, and they're trying to figure out, well, how do I exit this business, or how do I, let's say, monetize it in a way that really is going to give me that longevity. And so in many instances, by becoming your own tenant, you create millions of dollars that most people don't do because they probably rent most of their spaces rather than becoming their own landlord. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the strategies that we teach that give people incredible empowerment. So whether you're 40, 50, 60, 70 years old, you can do that. And now it gives you a fixed asset to lend off of for when you sell your business. Most people are just trying to sell, hey, this is my customer roster and this is my balance sheet. But if you put a fixed asset in there, now all of a sudden it's bankable.
Right.
And that's a huge victory. So, these are just a couple of strategies that you can employ. But even at 60, you're not behind the curve. You can get going. And I'll tell you, it's an elegant business because you get to do it at your own pace. You don't have to go crazy. It doesn't have to be this frenetic pace that you're going with. You don't have to be driving yourself crazy. Most of what we're talking about can be outsourced management, where they're collecting a 3 to 8% management fee, and you're out of the equation.
Sounds great to me.
Yeah, it really does work for a lot of folks, especially when you want to wind down and you don't want to work 40, 50, 60 hours a week like so many people who are in their 50s and 60s have done to build the base that they're going to build off of. And it doesn't matter what their walk of life was, what their prior education was, what their financial condition was. A lot of folks were coming out of divorce and they were devastated. A lot of people had just been downsized in a career. It was the only thing that they knew. And we were able to get them into something that they could methodically go through. And even methodically, it's 1 to 2 years away to completely change your life and create, let's say, annual compensation that you'd have to be a top-level, top-flight CEO to even dream of. And what's it take for a top-flight CEO to get hired? I mean, decades of experience and probably, Ivy League
and a
degree.
And a lucky break.
And a huge lucky break, and you got to have people that took you under their wing early.
You always say this. Look, if you could make $10 million in 5 years in a 5-year time frame, when would you want to start?
Yesterday.
There you go. And since you can't do that, when should you start?
Right now.
Right now. And that's what I've seen you do with so many people before, because there's so many, I think, perceived obstacles that if someone looking to get invested in something like commercial real estate view, and a lot of times it's just experience or know-how. It's like I can invest in commercial real estate, but I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Right?
Yeah.
And if I want to learn, it'll take me 5-10 years of making mistakes. But they come to you and they could use your organization, the Commercial Academy, as that time machine to get them that experience that typically takes a long time. They can get that in a year, a weekend.
Well, I've not only compressed it down 30 years of experience that I've got, but when you talk about the thousands of people that we've mentored, right? Because you were with me from 2005, right?
Yep.
So we've been doing this a long time, helping people, and you've certainly gone on to incredible success, building on some of the principles that we co-developed.
Sure.
And the reality, though, is that as you go through that, we've done literally tens of thousands of deals on literally hundreds of millions of square feet and many billions of dollars of investments, and we've distilled all of that information down. So even stuff that you couldn't do in probably a dozen lifetimes is now available in training models and case studies and experiential breakdowns from the early 2000s and the 1990s all the way through till today, but also in every geographic region and in every asset class and in every category and in every economic situation. So when you start to triangulate all of those various data points that are, could be changing, there's really not much that we haven't seen that we can't help people get through.
Yep.
And so, but what we always try and tell them to do is, look, keep it basic. If you can clean up a property and you can modestly raise the rents, you can get paid handsomely in a very short window of time. Some of the stuff that I do now could take, decades to manifest the full value because that's the stage of investment career that I'm in.
Sure.
But I still get involved in all kinds of small deals that turn around literally in 2 months on one signature. And we do that because people bring deals that I literally invest in and I get on a board seat. And then I help, along with, we've got dozens of other folks who do that as well that work with us through our ambassador program that help point out some of those pitfalls that you wouldn't see early in your career. And if they're also in the deal with you, now you've got the partner that has the financial wherewithal.
Yep.
They've got the experience, they've got the resume, they've got the schedule of real estate owned that makes what might not happen for you happen. But more than that, we've got those relationships with the users because it's the tenant's signature that adds all the value.
That's right.
But that tenant's got to be credit worthy.
Yeah.
So if that happens, instantaneously you get it. Again, there's an entire cornucopia of asset classes.
Good word.
Any marketplace you want to get into, close, far, someplace you aspire to retire, someplace where you came from and you want to go back to, or really even in your own backyard where you're at right now. Very little limitations on what people can do, but the key is acting and empowering yourself by just knowing there's no way to know it all. And there's no way to do it without making a mistake. There's a 100% chance that you're going to get something wrong. Nobody gets it right on every deal. Even to this day, I'm learning every day. And so the key is, if you know you're going to make mistakes and you know you can't know it all, then just start. Don't allow perfection to be the enemy of your start.
Yeah.
Because, again, you got to get the DeLorean up to 88 miles an hour in order for you to travel. So if you're not at least on the road, look, you could run into to Twin Pines Mall.
Yep, Lone Pine Mall.
Lone Pine is what it became, right?
It became, yeah.
Right? So you could run into that, but the chances are it's going to catalyze because you started and you're going to be on your journey because you had, let's say, the wisdom, the passion, and the gumption to start.
That's another $6 word. Cornucopia.
Gumption.
I hope for everyone out there that they have a cornucopia of gumption because that's going to get it done, right?
I think that's what it takes, right?
So look, here's one recommendation I'd make for everyone watching this and listening to this, that, experience is going to be critical in getting any of these deals done. And if you want to gain years of experience from Scott and his team that they've developed over the course of 25 years, you go to commercialacademy.com and you can see all the different programs and different ways that you can get training from them, whether it's their online programs where you can learn these things from the comfort of your home or when you're exercising or in your car, or you can join one of his live events where they have thousands of investors from around the country and around the world meeting and learning directly from Scott and the people that he's trained in a dynamic way. And you can accelerate your knowledge and meet people, and that's a great way to get started. And tens of thousands of people have gotten their start in their commercial real estate and their life story by doing one of those two things.
Well, and if they act ahead of time, they can bring live deals.
Right.
And those deals are literally getting funded in those events. I mean, we have our op swaps and people are getting stuff done. But I think the key, like you said, is getting started in the comfort of your own home in your spare time. If you can dedicate 1 to 5 hours a month, I mean, that is not a big commitment. This becomes a when, not an if, as long as you don't quit. Yeah. And that's really the key, is not quitting. Don't give up on the dreams that the Creator put in your heart. If you will follow through on those things, the fulfillment, the payoff of that ambition is real. And we've done it for decades already. We're going to do it for decades more. Yep. But the key is, you've got to believe in yourself. And if you'll believe in yourself, it doesn't matter what age, doesn't matter what stage, it doesn't matter what your past looks like. You can tread on other people's experience, other people's credibility, and other people's money. And with those three out of the way, there really aren't any limitations to where you can go.
That's heavy, Doc.
I love it.
Great, Scott.
Ha! Where's Einstein?
Well, I was actually talking about you. I was saying that was great, Scott.
That was nice.
Yeah, it was
Appreciate
wonderful.
it.
Now, if you're still watching, make sure you click the like and subscribe button. If you're listening on the podcast players, make sure you're subscribing there. You can follow Scott on all the social media handles at JScottShield, and check out the website Commercial Academy to find all the different training programs that Scott and his team offers through there. Scott, this is a really super interesting episode and a really great way to look at how time moves whether we do anything or not. So we better start doing something now because it's going to happen whether we like it or not. Time is undefeated. And if you want to make it happen, you can accelerate it through some of the things you talked about today. So I think this was a really helpful episode for all the people out there listening and watching.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And, we look at time as really a limiting tool or basically an unlimited tool. And if you can look at it the right way, you can create anything in your life in an instant, regardless of what it is. I mean, on any level. We're talking real estate today and finances, but there are so many other things. So we intend to unpack segments on the time machine to allow you throughout the rest of these episodes to do things that most people will tell you are impossible because we've lived it. We've lived it in a great way. We come from very humble beginnings. Hopefully we don't sound pompous now. We're grateful for everything that we've got. But if we can take the limits off of you, letting you know that your empowerment to allow yourself to act in the moment is the most powerful tool in the universe, you're going to see how this time machine unlocks basically a life and a lifestyle that you've probably never even thought you could allow yourself to believe in.
Yeah, the future's bright.
It sure is.